Welcome to Sync Up, a show about OneDrive, the intelligent files app for Microsoft 365. We are your hosts, Ankita Kirti and Jason Moore. I am Ankita Kirti, product manager on the OneDrive team.
And I'm Jason Moore, group program manager for OneDrive. This show will take you behind the scenes of OneDrive, shedding light on how OneDrive connects you to all of your files in Microsoft 365 so you can share and work together from anywhere while protecting your work from accidental data loss and malicious attacks.
Today, we are so excited to have Stephen Rice on the show to talk about remote working with OneDrive.
So don't go away. We've got a great show for you today.
Welcome, Stephen. Thank you so much for joining us on Sync Up. We have been excited and waiting for such a long time to have you on the show. Would you want to share something about yourself with our listeners?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I've been on the OneDrive team for the last 5 years or so, which I've been very proud of and happy to do.
We'll talk when it's like 15.
Is it possible to have more time on OneDrive than you?
No.
No.
Exactly. Something interesting about myself. I think most relevant to this particular podcast is that I also happen to do a Star Wars podcast. So we'll have to talk some Star Wars another time, potentially.
Yeah, no, for sure. Of course, this month, we actually wanted to talk to you about something that's on pretty much everyone's mind, and that's really about working remotely. We thought we'd dive in on how we're kind of getting the most out of working remotely with OneDrive, since this is Sync Up, the OneDrive podcast.
Very true. And let's start with talking about accessing your files. I think to have all the remote employees of an organization or the remote workforce being able to access resources and content from wherever they are working, be it their home or telecommuting, working from elsewhere. I think it's imperative to have them store their files in the cloud by default. And by that, I mean in OneDrive. So obviously, it is a matter of absolute criticality to have their files stored in cloud by default. And by that, I mean OneDrive. And it's easier for them to get their work done. Stephen, what are your thoughts on this?
I think you really hit the nail on the head. Having your files in the cloud it enables so many different scenarios and makes it so seamless, really, to start working from home. So this is something, we've gotten to experience a lot recently. And really, I open up my laptop at home and all of the files that I care about are available and at my fingertips, just like they would be while I'm at work. And that's because I have things like known folder move set up. So when I save a file on my machine, it's automatically put into the cloud. When I take photos with my mobile device, I upload them into OneDrive. So no matter where I go, what device I'm accessing from, all of the files are just there. And it's really powerful, I think, when you consider what it means to be able to open your files in the same way from different computers, different locations using OneDrive. No matter what device you're used to using, if you go from a Windows PC at work to a Mac at home, your files are there. You can access them via the same kind of file browsing method you're used to. It's really nice.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And, one of the things for me that's been a really big deal in all of this is features like differential sync. Because, those big files, like having to download those when I'm on the road or I'm at home is such a big deal. Getting just the bits that have changed really has a really big impact. We talked about it a couple episodes ago with some of the folks behind it, like Andre, and it's such a big impact kind of feature. But another one that, I always leverage is files on demand, just bringing down the files I actually need. Because, my OneDrive at work is well up there in the hundreds of gigs. And so not having to bring all of that down to a device makes a big difference to me.
Yeah, both of those are really key features that make it super easy to work from any location and from any device. Because you no longer have to think about, my laptop's only got, 120 gigabytes of storage open on it. I won't be able to download that file that I need. Nope, you just need just the files that you actively care about. You can bring them down on your device and get to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that makes a ton of sense to me, obviously, and I think our listeners all will kind of go, yep, That's OneDrive. We get that value and we see that power. The thing I'd add on is it's also for all of those files that the users may have been accessing through SharePoint or through Teams. OneDrive really is the unifying app that brings all of those pieces together, and so you're able to have those one app on any device and be able to bring them all down. I think it's interesting though for us to transition a little bit here into an area that's kind of really your expertise. For folks that don't know, maybe you didn't attend Stephen's talk this year at Ignite. If you haven't, please go back back, look for it on YouTube. It's a fantastic talk. He and Rafael Lopez Urcochea on our team did. And it's on secure and simple sharing. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of how we see the power of security kind of mixed with ease of use as opposed to in conflict? I know you think a lot about that, so I thought it might be great for you to share about how you kind of bring those into harmony.
Yeah, this is a space that is very near and dear to my heart and something that we've been working on for a long time. And it really comes down to the fact that, as we've seen this over and over again, the more you restrict what end users can do and put barriers in the way, the more likely they are to go and find some other way to do it that you can't monitor or isn't as secure. And that's really where OneDrive comes into play. We spent a lot of time thinking about how do we balance ease of use and security to make sure that you're getting really the best of both worlds. And we built a lot of amazing features that really let you kind of use collaboration as a foundation of your business. You can work together even when you're not in the same location. You can collaborate on files. You can work with vendors. It's all just a nice, neat package inside of OneDrive.
Now, Stephen, do you have a great example of like how you kind of found the thread of between kind of ease of use and easy access and making sure that it's secure by default?
My favorite is probably a feature we built called default sharing links. And the idea is, we in OneDrive, we support many different ways of sharing outside of your organization, people inside of your organization, or even just specific people. And one of the big things we heard a lot, and we saw a lot of enterprise administrators do, is they'd lock down those settings as far as they could. They'd say, we only want people to be able to share, say, with one or two people at a time. And when end users run into barriers like that, they go and find some other tool. They'll switch back to an email attachment so they can send something more broadly. And what default sharing links let you do is say, hey, I want to set my default sharing option when a user shares. So when a user comes in and they're not thinking, they just click a button, type a name, and click share, you can give them that secure option by default. But if a user needs something more powerful, if they need something that's a little more shareable or more open, they have the ability to go and choose that option deliberately. And it's a great way to ensure that users who aren't thinking are protected, your content is secured, but users who need the full power of collaboration that OneDrive provides can get to it in a quick and easy way.
Yeah, it makes me think one of the other subtle things that we've done here is because we've standardized on a consistent sharing and coherent sharing experience, whether someone's doing that in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, on their Android phone or on the web or on their desktop, but it's a Mac or it's a PC, or they're doing it in the OneDrive app on their phone or wherever they're getting to that experience, it's the same experience all up. So that as soon as they've learned or gotten comfortable with it anywhere, they can use it anywhere. They're not kind of getting tripped up by weird or different UI on a different endpoint.
Yeah, it's really nice when if you're writing help documentation, as we do, or as you might do for your organization, to say, hey, this is what it looks like. No matter where you are, what your device you're accessing from, one endpoint, this is the experience. Learn it once and you can use it literally everywhere. As some of the administration that I've done and as I've talked with customers, it's far more important to know what your users are doing, to use some of those auditing and reporting features that we have so you're aware of what your users are doing, so you can make the decisions and re-secure content if something goes wrong. And as soon as content leaves your kind of the O365 ecosystem, you lose that insight. You lose the ability to find out when something got shared broadly to hundreds of people in the world or whatever it might be. And that can be a really scary thing when it happens.
We should also note that when your stuff is in OneDrive, the co-authoring facility is not only available on the web, but also across desktop and mobile devices, which is extremely comfortable and brings huge familiarity in the way we work. But apart from co-authoring and at mention and comments, I think one of my newest favorite feature is requesting files. And it's extremely easy to gather documents from your remote colleagues, vendors, partners, and you do it so privately and securely just by sending an upload link.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts here on Kita. As you pointed out, things like co-authoring are just the results of amazing partnerships with teams over in Office and other parts of Microsoft to give you this really deep collaboration natively inside of the document. And co-authoring was kind of the first piece of that where you can work on documents at the same time together. But as I know, Jason, this is one of your favorite features, but things like at mentions that we've built into the product over the last couple of years.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It really just makes collaboration. It's more than just putting files in a shared location like a network share or something like that. And it's really about, hey, when we're in a document together, how do I make sure that Jason and I are most efficient? How do I draw his attention to that one paragraph where I really need him to help out and wordsmith a couple of things for me? And things like at mentions are a great way to do that.
No, that's right. And I love using them. As you know, it's one of the great ways to organize pulling together a big document, like when we're doing a presentation and we want to pull together all sorts of different content and different efforts of work. Being able to at mention, being able to comment on those things is just an awesome way to keep everyone connected to what we're doing.
Absolutely. The request files feature, that's another new one that we released just last year. Actually, I take that back. I think it was just early this year. And it's such another amazing feature. Again, going back to that point about usability and security, the request files link is really a way to help you bring in content into your organization in a way that doesn't let vendors or other partners see the content that is other people are uploading, which is going to be so helpful if you're working in the financial industry and collecting documents or any of those types of scenarios.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the things that I also use a lot when I'm working and collaborating on files is our file hover cards, where you can hover over files and see a bunch of activities on them, content about them. And then recently we rolled out conversation views across those, meaning that if I've shared a document or I'm in someone's OneDrive or on a SharePoint team site and I see a document, I can see the conversations that file is mentioned in, whether that's an email or in a meeting invite or in a Teams chat. And so it's actually really easy for me to get back to the context around that conversation, which I find to be a critical way to actually jump back into being immediately productive with collaborative kind of endeavors. And so that's a really cool feature that I think really helps bring all of this story together and connects back from the kind of OneDrive experience on the files into those conversation and communication heavy experiences like Outlook and Teams, where I might have been having a whole thread about things we wanted to go do with it. And I absolutely love that. We've talked a little bit on this collaboration stuff. Obviously, that starts to get into kind of how do I have control over this? How do I feel like my files and the files that are shared with me are working for me as opposed to making me do a ton of spelunking to get value out of them? Stephen, I'd love to get your kind of take on how we think about making it easier and more efficient to actually get to those files and those files shared with me and find a way that as I'm working remotely and I'm engaged from wherever I am, that I'm productive with all those files.
Yeah, this is one of those key features of OneDrive. OneDrive is really more than just a place to put files. It's an experience that lets you find the content that you actually care about. We've all had that experience of coming back from a vacation and you've got so many emails, you're overwhelmed. There's no possible way you can read through all of them. You declare email bankruptcy and wash your hands of it. But we have a bunch of features in OneDrive that are really amazing at helping you get back into the flow of work, figure out the things you've missed, not rely just on email and conversations to understand what's important to you. So a great example of this is the Discover view, which you can find in the left navigation in OneDrive or on our mobile device, which provides a personalized recommendation based on your working relationships. So as I'm working on documents, working on a presentation together, or I've got partners who are sharing things with me, those pop up in this Discover view because it knows what I care about, what files I've been working on, what people I care about, and will tell me about the documents that I think are important.
I absolutely love that. Actually, one of the things that I've found really helpful is kind of finding out what is going on when I'm looking for that document, but I don't quite remember the meeting I saw it in or exactly who shared it. But being able to see the things that are being productive, the things that are being engaged on, makes it easy for me to quickly get back to them.
Absolutely. And kind of in the same vein, we have the shared with me view, which is just a quick and easy way to see, hey, here are all of the incoming files to me. I don't have to go and find that email that Jason sent to me like 3 months ago. And I think it was named, podcast sync up plan version 2. No, I just go into share with me. I can look and filter down to things that I know Jason shared the file with me. I can look by time to see when it got shared. And it just makes it so much snappier, so much faster to get back to that content I care about. I no longer have to spend time looking for the things that I need to work on. I can just find them, work on them, and be productive.
I'm so glad you mentioned not remembering a file name or something, because it's one of those things that I think we've all lived is the hunt and peck through to find that file someone mentioned, because you don't want to be the person that's like, hey, you remember that file you sent me? Can you send me the link again? Can you send it to me again? I think there's always a little bit of social stigma about it. So these tools make it easy that I, A, don't have to do that. And B, if I'm doing something like a lot of remote work happens at different hours around the globe, I don't have to try to wake someone up or hope that they're checking their email in order to get back to something. It's that much easier to find it with all these tools.
Yeah, one of the things I really love is, and this happened to me literally this morning, Jason, when you were sending me messages about things you needed me to do. And sometimes I don't have my computer near me. I'm, in the kitchen or I'm out on a walk, whatever it might be. And you're just like, hey, Steve, real fast, I need that pointer to that document. And it's so easy. All of these same features we talked about are available on the OneDrive mobile apps. I just have to open up my phone, which I always have near me. I can find the files that I care about. I can go into that shared view and still find the file that Jason was talking about and look at. And it just means that I can literally be productive wherever I am, whether I have a laptop next to me, whether I have my phone. It's super easy, and it's just a similar experience. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And I'm glad to hear that I'm interrupting you on your walks. I'll try to be careful about that in the future. All right. Ankita, I think you wanted to switch gears and talk about security.
So we mustn't forget about the critical importance of protecting all this content, and people access from home over various internet connections, and in many remote cases from cafes, libraries, bus stops, and more, and still need the assurance that the organization can protect the data. So what are some of the tips for the admins, Stephen, according to you?
Yeah, as you point out, this is especially when you're talking about people working remotely from other devices that aren't necessarily on a corporate network or aren't in an office. Management and security becomes all the more important. This is the time where you want to get as much value out of the cloud and having files in the cloud as possible. And this is where OneDrive and Microsoft 365 makes it super easy to do, to help manage those remote workers and help manage their data. So as an administrator, you can control all aspects of OneDrive. You can implement multi-factor authentication, for example, to prevent unauthorized access. You can use that to help limit internal and external users, and external sharing is needed. And you can use groups to help limit storage quota and just make sure that devices are only having as much content as needed.
One of the things that we talk a lot about is when you're doing this remote work, you have often as the administrator, a person responsible for your organization and its data, concerns about how do you make sure that that data isn't going to run away? How do you make sure that the end user and their content is protected? One of the things that I love about all of this, of course, is that you have those abilities to make sure that the devices they take with them are, but how else do you think about, when someone from IT comes and talks to you, Stephen, around ways that they can feel comfortable and confident that they're setting it up in the right way that's going to enable productivity for their employees or their organization while still making sure that content's protected?
Yeah, this is where Microsoft 365 really provides a veritable wealth of options here. One of my personal favorites is what we call the DLP policies, or data loss prevention, which is a great way of saying, hey, there's particular types of data in my organization that are more important to me, that are more sensitive, things like health information or credit card numbers, social security numbers, the things that you really want to make sure you understand how they're being used and control access. And DLP lets you set policies and say things like don't allow download of these files, prevent how they can be accessed, require them to be accessed via a browser so they can't be taken down to the device. And all these types of policies really help you mitigate the risk of data leakage, because you've now ensured that the things that are most important to your organization, that are most secure or require the most security, have an extra layer of protection around it. And then you can use things like the Microsoft Endpoint Manager, which integrates a lot of the great features of Microsoft Intune and the Configuration Manager into a single console, so it's a much easier thing to manage. And it really just makes it easier to manage the actual endpoints and applications and ensure that users who are, say, downloading files onto their device are protected, and ensure that it's secure and you can wipe it if needed, and really protect and reliably control bring your own device scenarios for employees, especially as they're working remotely.
Yeah, and I believe we've got a pretty great blog post on efficiently deploying and configuring OneDrive. We'll make sure a link to that is in the show notes, because I know, when folks are thinking about this, they're really thinking about how do they make sure that they can have confidence in, as they threat model their data for their organization, they want to make sure they've taken all the steps necessary to give themselves the best leg up. And so we provide a bunch of that in some easy to consume forms to make it easy to do exactly what Stephen's talking about. Okay, well, Stephen, I have one last question for you. If you have any customer success stories to share, if you can share some of the amazing remote work that organizations have been doing with their employees.
Yeah, so this is, I had a talk with a great customer a few weeks ago. They're in the financial industry, and they were getting ready to enable remote work for a lot of their users across the country and across the globe. And the key for part of what they were going to do is the OneDrive mobile app, the ability to ensure that all of their users, because not every user has a laptop at home, not every user has a desktop PC, but almost all of them have mobile devices. And using the OneDrive mobile app was their way of ensuring that all of their users could remain connected and get access to all the files that are important to them as they're transitioning into this work from home environment. And it was one of those key preparations that really make a difference when they finally did move to remote work.
I love that example. And, as we've seen ourselves in studies with users, when they discover and start using that mobile app, they actually start using OneDrive better all up. They become more aware of how it can benefit them and the ways they can leverage it. And so I love that kind of, ability to get that deployed and the ability for people to be anywhere on the surface of the planet and be able to get access to those documents and work with them. And of course, it extends beyond just the OneDrive app on your iPhone or your Android phone or your tablet. That includes the Office experiences that we have, or Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and OneNote, which all work against OneDrive natively across those experiences, or being able to share and send links and consume those things in the Teams mobile apps and in Outlook, of course. I use this myself every single day, and I absolutely love it. I think that's a great way to connect folks and help them also get to the bridge of the divide where, they may not have the hardware or may not be set up in the right ways in order to make sure that people can stay productive.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. I hope this discussion was helpful for you and while working from home. And to get more tips about how to use OneDrive while working remotely, follow our social handles on Twitter and Facebook. We have an upcoming remote working tips campaign that might just benefit you. I want to thank Stephen for being such a great guest. And Stephen, before we let you go, where can folks find out more about you and your work?
Yeah, first, thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope the things I was able to talk about have been useful. So if you're interested in kind of reaching out and talking to me, you can always find me over at our tech community on both the OneDrive and SharePoint forums. I spend a lot of time there just trying to listen to feedback and try and ensure I can help problems where possible. So feel free to mention me if you need me. It's kind of like that bat signal. Jason needs me in a document because he needs help. He throws out the @mention. You can do the same thing on Tech Community. It's an awesome feature. You can find me at srice08 on LinkedIn. And if you happen to be interested in non-Microsoft and OneDrive-related content, if you're interested in, say, a Star Wars podcast, as I mentioned at the beginning, my podcast is the Ion Canon podcast, where we review lots of Star Wars television content. And that was my little plug.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Stephen, because that's actually related to our fun question for this episode. I love that you've been running that continuous Star Wars podcast for over 12 years now. That's just an amazing feat. I thought it might be fun for us to talk about what is your favorite movie to start the series with. So if you're talking to someone and you're saying, this is where you should start, what's the movie you start with?
Yeah, so I'll give the brief answer. I don't actually know if we've done an episode on this, but this is one of those things where deceptively you'd expect, this is a 1-minute question of, this is where you start. But there's a lot of complexity in where you can start Star Wars. We're not going to go in that. I don't know if we have time to go to that level of detail.
Maybe a future episode of Ion Canon can do that.
Exactly. I'm a bit of a traditionalist. I always say start with episode 4, A New Hope, where the story begins. Introduced to Luke, introduced to Darth Vader, introduced to Leia and Han. I don't think you can go wrong starting with the originals.
That is true. That is very, very true. I second Stephen's answer.
Before we go, though, Jason, I need to turn the question back on you. I need to know that you're worthy of my respect. Where would you start our listeners on Star Wars?
Look, I think we should definitely do some deep delve on this. There's so many ways to watch the series, but I've found that raising 2 young children, that starting with episode 1 actually was great with them, because episode 1 was something that really spoke to them. It was there was very kid-friendly stuff. My kids started watching Star Wars very early on, and so that's where we started. I personally, though, will always find episode 4 as my first Star Wars movie and my very favorite. So, it's if you've got young kids out there, you got kids that you're introducing to it, I actually think that's a great way to go.
I can understand that. I respect your answer, Jason. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the time today, Stephen. It's been great having you on, and I'm looking forward to all the reader comments and feedback and bat signals to you on the tech community so that folks can learn even more about how to enable themselves for awesome remote work.
Yeah, thank you again so much, Ankita and Jason, for having me. This has been a lot of fun, and I look forward to hearing all the reader comments.
So, next up, it's time to share with the listeners our latest OneDrive feature releases. So, the first one being conversations on the file card, which is a feature that we just discussed some time back. So, now when you hover over files that have been shared in an email, meeting invitations, or even private Teams chat, you'll be able to see those conversations directly in the file card, and it will allow you to jump back to those communications. So, you can collaborate in as many places as you want. The file card will help you remember where that work took place. And pretty neat. Apart from that, we also have the dark mode on Android now generally available, and the PDFs and scans that are being included in the recent view on Android is also generally available. We spoke about both these features in our previous podcast as well, when we had Eli and Daniela talking about the wonderful features in Android. And finally, we have made an update to our upload management algorithm. So now you can automatically adjust sync client upload rate based on the bandwidth ability. So this setting enables OneDrive Sync client to upload data in the background by only consuming unused bandwidth and not interfere with other applications using the network. So that's it from my side on the announcements this month. Jason, what's the special topic that you have for us this month?
Well, I thought we might do something a little bit different this time because with so many of us at home with our families and loved ones, or even having conversations with families and loved ones, the people we care about over Teams and FaceTime and Duo and WhatsApp and every other app and kind of call you can imagine, it might be useful to talk a little bit about how we have interesting conversations with each other.
Yeah, in these situations, I think the first thing is just to be patient.
Absolutely. In fact, especially, with all the things people are dealing with, kind of being patient and being mindful is an absolutely critical thing. And then if I said there's a second thing, I'd point people to watch an amazing TED Talk by Celeste Headley, a reporter and interviewer par excellence with some awesome history in public radio in particular. She did a talk called 10 Ways to Have a Better Conversation. And I don't want to recap it all. You should go see it. She does an amazing job telling the story on these 10 ways. We'll make sure there's a link in the show notes. But I thought I'd share two of the notes that really struck me. And I think about this a lot as we kind of spend time with people and kind of want to have better conversations with them.
And I'm looking forward to see how you implement them in your daily conversations.
I will work on doing better. The first that I'd call out is using open-ended questions when we're talking to others. Who, what, where, when, why, or how. The challenge of asking simple questions that have answers that are really yes or no is that that's the answer you get. And in a conversation going back and forth, yes and no are pretty boring. If we had Stephen on and we'd say, hey, can you share in OneDrive? And he said yes, that's a pretty boring conversation. And so being able to give people the room with open-ended questions really gets the most interesting questions. Asking people what it was like, asking how did they feel, that's going to give you the texture and quality that makes your engagement with folks, especially if you're spending a lot of time with them, that much more valuable and wonderful.
That's really true. And it also kind of shows a little bit of empathy. And especially in these times when people can get impatient and can get snappy, I think having open ended questions and, as you said, asking about how they are feeling makes a lot of sense. I love it.
The other one that I wanted to call out is staying out of the weeds. And this is something I am so guilty of. When I'm talking and sharing or saying something in a conversation, I can tend to go on 15 different tangents, or I can add lots and lots of detail because in my mind I can see it so clearly, but it's not helpful and it doesn't really move me through it. And the truth is people don't really care about the details you're trying to remember and fill in. They care about you. They care about what you have in common. They care about the ways in which you're unique. The details don't really matter so much. And when you think about the people you're spending time with, those closest to you, they want to focus on you. That's who they're interested in. That's who they care about. They don't care about how much you paid for milk at the store yesterday. They may care about how you felt going to the store yesterday and what that experience was like. And that also means that you don't necessarily dominate the conversation. You give other people a chance to talk, and that's critical.
So during the conversation, how do you go ahead and prioritize to make sure it is crisp as well as not aloof?
It's a good question because, I think all of us, when we're in a conversation, we kind of lose our mindfulness around the conversation, right? We're reliving that experience of the driver who cut us off and how it made us feel, not so much kind of thinking about how we're telling the story or how we're relating something. But I think kind of thinking about those things, like what is it about, the open-ended question of it, the feelings you might have had, and then what are the things that are unique about it? Where did it stand out in a way that's meaningful, that the meaning changes because of that? The price of milk in my story about the road rage is not really that meaningful or interesting, but how I felt, or maybe the car that I was driving or the other person was driving, that might really make it pop. And so that's something to just be mindful of. I would say in general, though, details aren't the thing to be focused on. So if you find yourself giving details, you're probably actually just delaying the gratification of being able to kind of bring things full circle and connect it.
Well, that's great to know. And I hope you've learned this lesson yourself, Jason.
I think it's fair to say that I talk a lot and I may embellish with a lot of detail that's not necessary. So this did leap out to me as something that I definitely feel guilty as charged and can do better on. Now, these are all just some samples. They're examples of this excellent talk. And, I think it's really worth folks taking the 10 minutes to go watch it. If you're listening to us right now, just click on over afterwards to the show notes. You'll find it. It's easy to search for on YouTube. And as you think about the next conversation you have with a loved one, talking with people you live with, interacting with coworkers and customers, there's some great takeaways out of that whole lifetime of doing wonderful interviews to really bring to our everyday conversations, to make them that much more interesting and compelling, and to walk away from that feeling more fulfilled, and for us to all kind of get more knowledge out of it. So go check it out.
Awesome. Thank you to our guest, Stephen Rice. To learn more about OneDrive and the latest developments, please follow our tech community blog at aka.ms/OneDrive/blog.
Please do send us your questions and feedback. You can reach us on Twitter at OneDrive, @Jasmo, and at Ankita_Kirti21. And definitely visit our show page for links, resources, and more at aka.ms/syncup. That's SYNCUP. Subscribe to and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoy SyncUp, spread the word. Your roommates, postal workers, food delivery folks, and every essential worker out there. It's fun to help others learn and find the show. And we all know how important and impactful sharing can be. To listen to other cool shows by Microsoft, go to aka.ms/Microsoft/podcasts. There's something for everyone.
Thank you for listening to SyncUp, a show about OneDrive, the intelligent files app for Microsoft 365. We are your hosts, Ankita Kirti and Jason Moore. We'll catch up with you next month. Till then, stay safe and stay healthy.